here we go. So, first of all, welcome to everybody from wherever you're from. And I'd like to acknowledge that I live and observe on the unceded lands of the Seashell First Nation. And a lot of this presentation is about First Nation. It's a big thing for us. Particularly, what I want to do tonight is I want to talk about the Northern Hemisphere because you guys are all observers up here in the Northern Hemisphere. There's the Southern Hemisphere that's got all kinds of interesting stuff, but you won't be as familiar with it. And I will be mentioning certain things about it, but there we go. Perfect. We want to talk about constellations and asterisms. Asterisms are groups of stars that have names, and that's what they were originally called when Ptolemy put all of this stuff together. He called it asterisms. It wasn't about 1400s when a certain author by the name of Chaucer started using it. The people started using the name constellations instead. So constellations now are official asterisms. And I want to focus on the most common names that are in use because believe me, there's thousands. Let's open that curtain. Here we go. So we were up at the observatory a few weeks ago and actually doing a star party in Todd Park in Sandy Hook. We were watching the Perseids, which was a really good show this year. And they're called the Perseids because they come from an area of the sky where the constellation Perseus is. And this is called the radiant. And here I've got a picture showing you where the Draconids come from, because this is coming out of the constellation Draco. And it's coming from Lyra, it will be Reds, and so forth. So here's a picture I borrowed from Astronomy Now. It's a British magazine showing you the radiant of the quadrantid shell. And that's right, you can't see a constellation there with that name, can you? And there's a reason for that. Hold that thought, we'll get back to that. You're probably thinking, well, this is trivia, who cares? I mean, really, is this really important? I mean, there used to be these constellations, they're not there. Are they important? And the answer is yes, they are extremely. Right now, we're into our third year of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada's World Asterisms Project. That's our symbol there. If you go up and look at the sky, you'll find Arcturus, you'll find Spica, you'll find Deneville at the back of Leo there, and Vidia Matrix in the middle. They're all double stars. We call that the connector. And what we are doing is collecting the sky cultures of the entire world and putting them in one place where everybody can use them. So far, 13,006 asterisms, including for 137 names of the Milky Way, 2,635 telescopic asterisms, 267 asterisms. We haven't figured out where they are yet, but we're working on it. Total sky cultures, 573 names for the sun, moon, planets, 1,600 grand total, over 14,000. And we're still rolling. And this isn't a program which is about reconciliation, because we're working with several First Nations and Indigenous people all over the world to recover skies that would otherwise be lost using the two-eyed sea concept, which was created by Albert Marshall for the Mi'kmaq people. And this was a pilot project that was done by the Halifax Center, who succeeded in getting the sky of the Mi'kmaq people back into use. They had a lunar calendar, they lost the use of it, and now they can use it again. And if you're interested in this sort of stuff, quick plug here, you can go to the RASC website, and we have materials where you can get planets that will show you various different First Nation skies and some good books there as well. And the reason we're doing this is because of things like this. That's the residential school that was here. It's not anymore, it got torn down, there's a hospital there now. But this and all of the places in the world where institutions like this are and thrive were put together specifically to eradicate culture and language. Now, I know from talking to my Australian ethno-astronomer colleagues who are trying to recover skies for Aboriginal people in Tasmania, they were able to use the records. I'll get to that older record stuff in a moment, but they were able to recover the skies. Unfortunately, the people whose skies they recovered no longer exist because the settlers considered them vermin and eradicated them. I don't need to remind you that we found on our graves recently. So the way you recover these skies, one way is to talk to the elders. And the trouble with that is This elder heard it from his parents, who heard it from their parents, who heard it from their parents, who might have been the people who still actually used those guys. So we're getting further and further away from the people that actually used it, and these people are passing, and they're passing with the knowledge, and so there's some urgency to this. And the other way to do it is to look at records from the past. Now, I've specifically chosen this picture here because this guy here, Mr. Standridge, was instrumental in covering skies for the Buron people in Australia and other people, and he was very diligent about trying to recover these things and make sure this stuff didn't go away. So there are things of explorers, officials, missionaries, traders, etc., who did record skies, but not all were sympathetic, like Mr. Standridge here. And this is the one thing I want you to take away from this talk, and don't take anything else. They were reporting information and relating it to the version of the sky that they had access to, gained from star charts of their time, which were not standard and constantly being changed. Give you an example. This is my friend and colleague, Dr. Sheen Pete at UBC, who is Salish, inland Salish from Montana, but he's recovering Salish skies for Coast Salish as well. And we were having this discussion because he's having some success with this. He's doing pretty well. And he said, you know what? I was looking at this old record and I came across this constellation. Who can tell me what that is? It's a Greek acid. It translates as a dog's tail. And it's the name of the Greek poet Aratus used for this northern constellation. He put it in his poem Phenomena, 270 BC, which is full of constellations. It was later Latinized by Ovid and by Germanicus, and it is related to some myths of the sky about how this was put aside by the Greek god Zeus. It's Ursa Minor. Let me take another one here. This is a constellation you see on star charts all through the Middle Ages and into the Renaissance. And it's still in the sky, but it's not called that. It's called Arctophylax, which means bear watcher or bear keeper. It's Boötes now. Here's another one. If you're looking for Hercules on these old maps, you won't find him. You'll find Engonasin, the kneeler. Usually, if you do find Hercules, he is kneeling, because originally this is what he was put up in the sky by Ptolemy as, right? And you can see he doesn't have anything other than the club in his hands, but a little bit later in this presentation, you're going to see all kinds of interesting things showing up. Giving you an idea of the kind of stuff we're dealing with. This is the original form of Auriga as described by Ptolemy. And it actually looks like a charioteer. I mean, the current one on the IAU charts looks like a thought bubble for Taurus, actually, I think. But this looks like a charioteer, but it's also got this star here, which is labeled goat. Can you see there's 3 stars just down below that? Hold that thought. Now, he knew when he created this constellation that this was a major sport, chariot racing. People were absolutely fanatic about it. It was teams, there was factions, there was all kinds of nonsense, gambling and so on. And he knew that every single state and city had their own name for this constellation because they all had their favorite charioteer, real or mythological. And you can see a list of many of them here. But one of them I've underlined at the bottom here, Erichthonius. That is a very common name for this constellation, medieval and Renaissance charts. Now, Auriga. And we were talking about the kids a minute ago. Well, right there is the star Capella, which actually translates as the small female goat. And there's the kids. And it's an old Greek asterism, which was attached to this. Because, there's no reason why a charioteer would be carrying goats around. Seriously, but it just happened that it overlapped. And so the two got merged together. And this happens quite often. You see constellations merging and constellations being torn apart. For some reason, they all seem to depict him with furry boots and a furry hat. But he's always carrying a harness or a whip in his hand. Pretty easy to see who he was meant to be. You can see We'll get to this one later. There's all kinds of wonderful things. Now, this is a little bit faded. I recognize the very old chart. This is from 1515 by Dürer, Heinvogel, and Stavius. But you see on here, Auriga is called agitator. Aquila, the eagle is Vulture volans. Equileus is Equus prior, and next door Pegasus is Equus Pegasus. So there's all kinds of names that you aren't familiar with. Same cartographers, uronographers is the proper name for making star charts. You can see there's a big hole in the southern sky because in 1515 nobody had been down there and started creating star charts and measuring stars and coming up with constellations. Lupus down here, you can see Centaurus, Spirian Lupus, he's called Pharaoh, which is Latin, it means beast. And you can see Argolis, that was one of Ptolemy's constellations. It was the biggest one. And it's always depicted as half of the ship coming out of the clouds, usually a galley. But it's you know, these are all constellations that Ptolemy could have seen from where he was, but they couldn't see any further south than that. So up to this point, you don't have any of those new constellations. But you'll notice one other thing if you know your maps. They're reversed. Now, what would that be? How would they do that? They're all backwards, and to left to right. They're the wrong way around. As a matter of fact, Abu al-Hussein al-Rahman al-Sufi, who was a very famous Persian astronomer, translated Ptolemy's Almagest. He called it the Kitab Surah al-Tawhid, the Book of Big Stars. This is 964 CE. He used the aerozone star names, he used magnitudes that he determined, and he gave pictures of all the constellations as viewed from below and as viewed from out there looking back at the Earth. Now, it was very, very common for Arabic constellations, the older ones, prior to Ptolemy stuff, to be depicted as viewed from above. So we're used to, like Leo the Lion viewed from the side. They had a much larger constellation of Lion, as if you're looking down on top. Okay? So what happens is you get people starting to do charts where they're the right way around, like Elijah Burritt here, and you're going to see his name over and over again here. He came up with all kinds of new names or spellings for stars that are still with us. The stars A Crux and Gay Crux, the Alpha and Gamma stars and the Southern Cross, he named them. But then you get these. And very often, I've chosen one that isn't this way because it's a little easier to see, but very often what they have, a map of the Earth with this superimposed on it, so it's kind of hard to read. But it's as if you're out in space looking back at it. So it's kind of interesting. If you want to use this chart to actually figure out what you're looking at in the sky, you have to reverse it. Now, yeah.
So is the center, like I've seen so many pictures now with that, like an X, is that north, is that the pole star?
Well,
center?
some of them are that way. No, here is northern hemisphere, that's southern hemisphere, okay?
Okay.
This is the pole here.
Yeah, right in the middle.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
There are different projections from the sea here. I don't want to get into that. But between the 13th and 19th century, people were constantly doing constellations. We're constantly doing the sky. This guy was one of them. I'm going to show you one of his right now. This is the rooster, Gallus, down here. And this is Flemish astronomer Petrus Plantius. This is 1612. And he says, I'm going to take these stars here and make Gallus the goose. But look at this. That's Canis Major. He's named it for just the bright star, Sirius. Note the spelling. There's Canis Minor. It's named for just the brightest star there. And that's Monoceros, but it's called Unicornum. Here's one he created. There, everybody, I think, recognizes Aries the ram there, but there's a bug in the sky above it. It was originally called B, but then people called it Musca borealis, which is the fly, northern fly. And there were French astronomers that decided it should be a fleur-de-lis. So you see all kinds of different variations of that. There was a period in the 1500s to the 1600s where Julius Schiller, William Schick, both of them astronomers, but also clergy, and the German poet Philipp von Zessen decided sky's too pagan. Erase the sky, We're going to make it entirely biblical. And then none of them agreed. One was going, that's Andrew. No, it's not. It's Matthew. No, it's Joseph. So, like, it didn't go in because nobody could agree. But then along came this guy. Now, I actually have a copy of this, or Urania here. It's a wonderful source from that period. The proper title is Urania, or a complete view of the heavens containing ancient and modern astronomy in the form of a dictionary, a digitized copy. And he was a renowned botanist, but he also was really interested in skies. He listed a lot of those Christian constellations by Schiller and Schickard, and almost every single time he also had somewhere along the lines of, and here's another of those constellations created by people who had far too much time on things, which is amusing because then he went, but there isn't. And so he put all there, the earthworm, the eel, Olympic, mussels, shellfish, a slug. And they're actually really good astros. They actually, you know how some of these star lines, they look very much like what people are claiming it looks like? They don't really, I'll show you one. Right there, that's beautiful of the toad. Yeah?
There's even an pangolin up there.
Oh, yes, and eager. That's right. Anyway, as a result of all this, about 8 years before this date here, they formed the International Astronomical Union because they realized there is no way we can share astronomical information as scientists with one another. We're all using different charts. So we're going to get together, or we're going to figure out what to do about it. In 1922, they said, no more, that's it. 80 constellations, these are them. And 8 years later, they said, and we're putting borders between them, stop messing with the stars. But, so there you go. 88 constellations. I'm showing you southern ones here primarily. But you know what? If you go on Stellarium, who here is Stellarium? It's a wonderful program. If you don't, you need to get it. There is the default Western, which is the IAU star lines, but you've also got Western Sky and Telescope jumped in there and said, oh no, I think we should draw the lines this way. And then you've got the Hungarian Astronomical Society under Ohlad and his colleagues creating their star lines. And then you got this guy. Anyone here remember who H.A. Ray is? I'll give you the first name. Who? He invented Curious George. And this. And in it, he created his own star lines, which he thought looked more like the objects that they were describing, and they actually do. And I know an awful lot of astronomers who started up with this. If you've ever watched The Insider's Guide to the Galaxy that I do with Chris Vaughn started with that as a kid. So, one of the reasons they do all these crazy things is they're seeking royal patronage. For example, here we have Robert Caroline, and this is up in the corner here is Sir Edmund Halley, who was the royal astronomer then. Yes, Halley's common is named for him. And he created, you see there's Argo Navis coming out of the clouds. You see right over here, there's a tree planted in the ground. And this is the Charles Oak, because the story goes, Cromwell's looking for Charles before he became Charles II, and he hid in the tree and he escaped him. So he decided to create this constellation up there. And it is made up of stars that were borrowed from Argo Navis. And French astronomer Nicolas Louis de la Caille, you're going to meet, he objected strongly. Oh no, those are the best stars. Of course, he was French, so he wasn't really keen about putting English constellations up there. This is from Stellarium, and what they've done recently is they've gotten all of the star charts from Hevelius, who is a famous astronomer we will meet in a moment, and put them into Stellarium. So these are the original images. There you see Robert Carolinum down there. There you see Argo Navis, and you can see it's turned around. There's also Charles Hart. I think everybody here has heard of the star Corcoroli. May not realize a few years before Halley came up with this, Sir Charles Scarborough, who was a physician to Charles II, named this star. It is always depicted as a heart with a crown over it. And so You know, it's basically related to that, but look to it right there. That's the Big Dipper. Can you see what that says? It says septentrial, which means the seven oxes, which is an old Latin name for that constellation. And under it, it says Charles Wain, Charles Wagon, which is an anglicized version of an Old Norse constellation, which is the Karlsvagen, the man's. Because yes, Charles is my name is derived from a word in Germanic languages, which means man. So here's one. Frederick's Glory was created by Johann Elert Bode here, who is, you'll see his name all over these things coming up, and you can see a whole list of people who came up with variations of the name and also used the constellation in the sky. And there it is. That's Lacerta, the lizard up there. And right next to it, that's it. And if you're looking actually at the sky, there's the great square of Pegasus. You can see Lacerta there. You can see over there the leaning garden shed of Cepheus. And right there in the middle, that group of stars aligned with the one bright star up to one side. That's.
So what does Lacerta mean?
Lacerta is a lizard. You'll see it again. This gentleman here is the famous Hungarian priest and astronomer Abbe Maximilian Hell. Interesting name for a priest. They named a crater on the moon for him. So if anyone ever asks you what the location of Hell is, you can tell them it's on the moon. Check the moon chart. So anyway,
Hell has a different meaning.
Yes, I know. Anyway, he liked to honor other astronomers, and he created two constellations to honor William Herschel and his discovery of the planet Uranus. And he had two telescopes, a 20-foot one and a 7-foot one, and he put them in the sky. And along came Bode, his line, and he said, "Now too complicated." So we took the smaller one out, merged things, and made it into one. And that's what it looks like, telescopium Herschel. But it's not the sky anymore. You can see Auriga there. You can see the Lynx, the northern constellation. George's Psaltery is another one that helped create it. This was to honor the third, because the third was giving him some money for his projects. So we'll put them in the sky. There you go. And it shows up on various other charts, all the way down to Scottish uranographers, Alexander Jameson there, and you're going to see his name over and over. Here's another one, Brandenburg Scepter. That's Orion up there. There's Lepus, that very beginning of Eridanus, the river, and there's scepter representing the coat of arms of the Brandenburg thing. Does that look like twins, Gemini? In Belarusian culture, that's Poland and Lithuania. So you know. Okay, now this guy was an absolutely amazing mathematician, famous for his mathematical skills, but he was also an astronomer, and he decided what I'm going to do is I'm going to completely redo the sky with the coats of arms of all the colonial powers. And it's really confusing because you've got the map with the actual constellations, and on top of that, you slap the coats of arms. So you got to really sort of pay attention to figure out what's going on. You'll notice this huge double-headed eagle is behind the whole thing, and then here it is also on the projection with its wing on that side. That is the coat of arms of the Brandenburg family. Can anyone tell me who they think his patron was? It's not rocket scientist, so I think you can figure that out. Let's look at some other new constellations. At the very beginning, I mentioned the quadrantid meteor shower. Here you go. This is Le Mural, which was created by French astronomer Jerome Lalande in 1795 between Boötis and Ursa Major to commemorate the wall-mounted quadrant at the École Militaire Observatory in Paris, where his nephew used to view the sky. All kinds of other people have listed this in their charts over the years, but eventually, when the IAA decided to standardize the sky, they dumped it. But the quadrantids, that's where they got the name. There's where it is. You can see Draco up there. You can see Boötis, that kite-shaped thing there. You can see the tail end of the Big Dipper there, and it's that piece of sky right in there. That's the quadrant. He also, this is a picture of below here, created the hot air balloon, which appears on charts under all kinds of different names. You can see it here, quite popular on German charts, showed up on Jameson's chart. Here it is, the hot Globus aerostats. And he also created this, I kind of like this, because in his blog, he wrote, I'm very fond of cats. I will let this figure scratch the chart. The starry sky has worried me quite enough in my life, so now I can have my joke. It's right there. This is Hydra, the constellation Hydra, the crater there, which is always depicted as being on the snake's back. And that's what it looks like on the starlight. And even though it's no longer in the sky, the IU chose a particular star in there, which has an exoplanet, and said, you know what? We're going to name that Venus. The apple branch. Now, this one is crazy. I was talking about Hercules earlier. An unidentified Venetian illustrator, 1488, illustrating a star chart, which was supposed to be based on the works of the first century scholar Hyginus here, showed an apple tree with a serpent wound around it next to Hercules. And the next thing you know, there's Hevelius again. He puts it in his hand. And then you get all these different versions where they start bringing in Cerberus, which is a completely myth. And so you end up with, for example, Ramus pomifer, the apple branch. This is a chart from an English uranographer in the late 17th, early 18th century. And there is Hercules with a branch with a whole bunch of serpents. Very, very common. It's all over the charts. Here's Hevelius again. You see, he has turned it into Cerberus. And just in case you were wondering, Cerberus is a multi-headed dog that guards Hades, which was the Greek place where all the dead people go. Here's one that this astronomer up here made, French astronomer Pierre Charles Lamy, 1776. It was supposed to represent the extinct flightless bird Rodriguez solitaire, but the people who wanted to create this didn't know what that looked like. So they made a picture of a rockthruss. Genus Turdus. So it's the Turdus solitarius. And it appears on various different charts. And Jameson comes along and he goes, no, that you won't do. He turns it into the night owl, Noctua. Seeing as we're talking about Scottish schoolmaster Alexander Jameson, I wish I could show you a picture of this guy, but I can't find one. Charts. Wonderful work went into this. But he created stuff too. So here's Aquarius, okay? Typically, if you look at Aquarius, one of these charts, you see a guy that's got a cloth in his left hand, and he's got an overturned urn or amphora in this arm that's pouring water out. And he's taken the cloth away and he's put a nilometer in his hand, which is a device used to measure the floodwaters. The river, the Nile specifically, is where it was originally used. Now, there's the balloon aerostaticus coming up, the hot air balloon down there. We're going to come back to this in a sec, but also created the sundial. Now, this is the southern sky, and if you're not familiar with the southern sky, there is a constellation up there called Reticulum, and that was created by Lacaille. I'll come back to him in a moment, but it was called that because it was that is an eyepiece of a telescope, and rather than crosshairs, they used a rhomboid, which is interesting. I have not ever seen an eyepiece like that myself, but apparently it was very common. He was observing from South Africa or something like that, and he put it in the sky. But Jameson comes along with, nah, that's a sundial. No, I don't like that. So there is Abbe Nicholas Louis de Lacaille of 17. So this is his sky that he's created, and there, right there, is the reticulum. But look at all the machinery there he's put in the sky. He's getting ready for navigators to use the sky. He's put the fornax up there. He's got the sculptor. He's got the microscopium. He's got telescopium. He's got all of these different machines. Antlia, the air pump. They're all objects that would have been familiar to people in that day and age. So it's a kind of a snapshot of his culture. Okay, we're back to Jameson's chart again. This, you'll see, is called the Fluvius Aquarius River. It's pretty common on charts to see some of these bunches of stars named as rivers, and there are others. The Nile River is there, Fluvius Nilus. So it was quite common to see all kinds of rivers on these charts as well. Now here is Hevelius. I keep mentioning him and showing you his charts. He created an asterism called Mons Mainalis, Mount Mainalis, on his charts. And you can see here is Loki standing there guarding the pole, but he's standing on a mountain. And you'll notice over here, here's the mountain. Over here, that's Ophiuchus, but it isn't called Ophiuchus. This is the most common name for Ophiuchus actually in all charts. It's Serpentarius. Because they basically depicted it as one thing. He's a serpent wielder. We're going to call him Serpentarius. He's standing on Scorpius there. The fox and the goose is one that Hevelius created. And we have half of this still in the sky. And it went into all kinds of different charts over the years. And he said, I wish to place a fox and a goose in the space of the sky well fitted to it because such an animal is cunning, voracious, and fierce. Aquila and Vulture are the same nature, rapacious and greedy. So there it is. So Vulpecula, you all recognize that one, except that's the fox, right there between Cygnus and Aquila. But there, you see, there is answer. They were separated for a while and then put back together, and then the goose disappeared, and we just had the fox. Now, Triangulum is one that has been all over the place. This is one of Ptolemy's original constellations, and he called it just a triangle, trigonon. But then it was also in his age called Deltanon, which is because it represents the capital letter delta in the Greek alphabet. And then it goes through a whole bunch of different variations of the spelling, including one that is the world is divided into three parts in Latin, and then you've got some other variations. And then you've got Hevelius comes along and says, you know what? I can improve upon that. So what he does, he takes a single triangle and he turns it into two. So here's an earlier chart by a Swiss-German artist, Just Amann, and you can see there's deltas. You can see them in the top center. That's triangle. But here, on this chart, by Hevelius, you can see he's made it two. Of course, we've gone back to one again. Antinous is one that is in all of these charts. This is the original Greek spelling. It means it's one. And it was part of Ptolemy's constellation, the eagle. I'm going to show you the eagle because, again, if you draw it exactly as he describes it, it looks like an eagle. Not the Aquila, but he's drawn it to look like an eagle. You see that? There's the two wings, there's the head, and there is Antinous being carried. That's the figure being carried, okay? Now, it wasn't very long before Emperor Hadrian came along, and he had a male lover who died, and he wanted to commemorate this guy, so he colored it and repurposed it. So it ended up in a lot of charts being drawn like that, okay, and spelled like that. That is on charts right up to the time when they stabilized the sky and then suddenly gone. Here's English astronomer John Blackgrave, and there is Antinous, 1611. Now, this guy here, American aeronographer William Croswell, was a bit of an eccentric, wonderful looking Mercator projection, but he came up with two constellations. One is right on the top there, Sirius Balaans, the flying squirrel. I have searched the chart, there is no moose, unfortunately. Forgot the moose. We did put on here is what he calls marmor sculptile, which he translates as the bust, and actually the Latin term for bust is imaginem. But anyway, this is supposed to represent Christopher Columbus, and the only chart this appears on is this one. Everybody else got it. Here's one. This is the constellation Tucana, which is a toucan in the southern sky. But for some reason, both Kepler and the famous Italian astronomer Giovanni Battista Riccioli said, oh no, that's an American goose. And so it went through various different, John Hill listed that name. There's Adolf Steeler calling it American Gans, basically the same thing. And there's Burritt again. That's Burritt's chart you're looking at. You can see it says to count the American goose. So in the end, you end up with all these beautiful charts, some of them colored, some of them not, some of them the right way around, some of them the wrong way around. With a very collection of names, and all of these brand new constellations in the southern, some of which aren't there anymore, and that is why it's awfully difficult to try and recover this stuff from older records, because people are being told what these Aboriginal people see in the sky, and they're looking at this chart, describing it according to that, which is not what we use now. You get charts like that. Now, if you're really interested in this stuff, you can go to the World Asterisms Project site. You can download this stuff for free, and we're happy to make that available to you. People have suggested we should turn it into a book. Absolutely not. This is a research project. This is for people to help recover skies and so on. It's a living project. That's what my inbox looks like right now. We're updating this thing as many times as twice a month.
Who are your collaborators on this?
I have, while I'm describing that, could you maybe bring slide number 95 up? This is a sweat equity bit. This is ethno-astronomers from all over the world who are waiting for somebody to do this. And it was about 2 days into the project that I got someone from Belarus, Dr. Timothy Avalon, saying, I've got stuff for you, I can share it. And we got 20 years worth of lists from the Australian crew led by Dr. William Hamaker, and we've got all this African stuff from Augie Slittergraph and all of his colleagues, and the people from all over the world are diving in and saying, here's stuff, let's put this together. And now we've got people coming to us like Dr. Pete saying, okay, I have these little records, I'm trying to figure out what this is they're describing. Now I'm able to generate stuff saying, this is what I think you see. And they're starting to put things back together. I should mention though, there are some cultures that have been lost. Nothing to do about it. I want to give you the example of the Hawaiian culture, because what happened in 1976 is they created a full-size voyaging canoe type that ancient ancestors used. And they went looking for a navigator that could show them how to use the stars again. And they found the Sapwani's navigator, Maopilu. And he said, you know what? Same stars, they're up there. I can show you how to navigate, no problem. Doesn't matter what they're called, but we'll show you how to do it. But you know, you can go back to all the different Polynesian cultures around you, same language group, and I bet you'll be able to recover a lot of the names. And they did. They said, you know what? If you've lost the name, make your own, name it again. So the current name, Hawaiian name for Orion is the cat's cradle, because that's a kid's game, Polynesia, but it has strings that make patterns. Wasn't it like that? Yeah.
A teaching map that we got donated and I gave it to the RASC. That guy, that professor at UBC did that in 1945. Now, why would he have to hand make a map in 45? Were they rare in that long ago? Like,
they weren't rare, but the number of people were available to make them more interesting. There was principally people making cartographers. They're making maps of the ground.
yeah.
And there was a need for maps for navigators in the sky. And you know, they were still trying to sort, the RAF came up with a manual on how to use the stars to navigate. They, in fact, named a bunch of stars. There's a constellation, the Peacock, in the southern sky, and it's Alpha Star. They wanted to use it, and they didn't know what to call it, so they called it, hey, we'll call it the Peacock. That's magic. This is what I wanted to show you right here. Brad and Catherine Templeton, organizers of the 2004 Burning Man. Everybody know what Burning Man is? They get together every year in that Black Rock Desert. This year they got it. And they created this sky. They took the sky that would be over them at that time for the festival, and they created brand new constellations. And you can see here, you've got the water truck, which is the big good area. You got naked ravers, you've got RVs, you've got fire spinners, Canis majoris. My favorite, I told you, the leaning garden shed, CPS, they've turned it into Costco carporters. So yeah, you can have a lot of fun with this stuff. Anybody else have any questions? It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun doing this stuff, tracking this stuff down. It's unbelievable when you are working with someone like Shane did, and he says, I figured it out. Makes sense. This tribe over here, he found that they do it this way, and these guys copied it, and this is what you do. Yeah,
So the actual beautiful,
they're of it. They have a working group on star names, which they have used to approve names for stars, because the one thing they didn't do in 1922 was approve star names. And those, each one of those major stars up there has multiple names. And now they've figured out a lot of those are multiple stars. So now you can go to the IE site and you can find a list saying that name actually belongs to the alpha star in the system or whatever. And in 2019, they went to all of the countries of the world and said, we're going to assign you a star from the Parkes catalog that doesn't have a name. This is a star that we've identified that has an exoplanet. Name it and planet. And we have a whole bunch of new stars from cultures all over the world. So it's a work in progress. It's stuff that's going on.
I'm really confident of being interested.
Well, it is. It is. I'm already getting requests on a semi-regular basis to help review papers and do presentations for conferences and stuff. People are definitely interested in this. It's been scattered through all kinds of papers all over the world. And now that we have the ability to go and look at digital papers and digital copies of books like Urania or whatever, and the charts, the globes, the planetospheres, the astrolabs, you can start to put this stuff together. All that needed to be done was people to go, look, this is how it evolved here. And this is at this time it looked like this, and this time it was called this, don't look like that. And that's what these people like Dr. Robert Cardinal Blackfoot is recovering their skies. Same thing. Like, okay, they're describing a constellation here, I think. And you go, I know what that is. Let's dig that out for you. So that's what this is all about. Yeah.
Well, when you say that you okay, I know what they're talking about, or you're talking about, are you saying because of the relative positions of the things, or
It's a number.
what kind of clues would you use?
It's a number. If the stories bleed over. So, for example, one of the most common ways of viewing the Big Dipper is the Dipper is an animal, a bear or a moose or an elk.
Yeah.
And the stars of the handle are the hunters.
Okay.
So you see that all over Northern Asia. You see it going into Eastern Europe. You see it all over First Nations in North America. Like the Mi'kmaq, I mentioned the Mi'kmaq. They call it Muin and the Seven Hunters. So you've got the bucket is the bear, and then there's 7 stars going all the way down to Arcturus, and each of the 7 stars is a hunter. They're all birds. And the double star in the handle, Mizar and Alcor. Mizar is a chickadee, and the other star is his cooking pot. And against this bear, I'm going to cook it. So partially it's going, okay, this culture describes it this way, and these people were next door described it this way. Can we see something similar here? You see similar themes coming up. I know it drives you absolutely nuts that Ursa Majors's got a long tail because bears don't have long tails. I absolutely agree with you. We were standing up at the observatory one night, and he goes, he's staring at this thing, and I go, what are you looking at? He goes, that's not a bear. What is it then? He's a rat. He's right. So, well, but these cultures are all looking at the sky based on whatever their experiences are seeing in different ways. Orion is typically way north and way south depicted as a person standing there with a belt of some sort. But if you're in equatorial regions and it's coming up, the belt is coming up sideways, it's a plow, it's a spring trap, it's all kinds of things, So it's partially trying to figure out how do these myths migrate, how do these, what different visions are there. If you're talking about these particular constellations, they start with Ptolemy and Hipparchus, these people. they get translated into Arabic, and the Arabs already have a very elaborate sky. And then they start getting translated back in the 1200s to, or the 12th century to Latin in various different European countries. And you get variations in the spelling. You got variations of like Canis Venetici, the hounds. Here's Boötes, and he's got 2 dogs on a leash. Except the way that it was originally drawn is he had a club. And it got translated into Arabic, and the Arabic translator didn't know what kind of a weapon this was. And he says, I think it's a stick with a hook on it. And then a 12th century Latin translator looks at it and goes, I think that means dogs. So suddenly you've got dogs, and there wasn't dogs there before. This is the kind of stuff that you're looking at. You're looking at how these stories evolve and develop, right?
So is that being researched by social anthropologists studying the time?
This is a field that started in about 1980, and it's called ethnoastronomy. And it's directly related to archaeoastronomy. Archaeoastronomy is, look, Stonehenge, it's aligned to things, isn't it? Because I can take my house and align it to all kinds of things in the sky, and I never intended it to be aligned with anything, you know. But then you go to an ethnoastronomer and you say, okay, I found this structure. It looks like it's aligned to these constellations and stars. What were these people looking at? And you say, well, they were using this, and they saw this, and you go, oh, that must actually be an alignment. The two work together, okay? That's the thing. So it's a relatively new field, but there's a whole bunch of very keen people out there, you know, amateurs like myself and professors all over the world who are doing this. When we had our opening, our grand opening 2 and a bit years ago at the annual General Assembly, the very first face I saw on Zoom popping up on the screen was Dr. Christopher Lehman, is one of the Australian guys. And I'm like, Christopher, what day is it there? And he goes, it's 3 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. You got people who are really, really excited about this. And like I said, this does not cost the society anything. It's all sweat equity. We have a Google Drive where we share all of the current files with the other researchers, and they can share stuff with us. And it's a matter of just digging through it and making sense of it. So,
what's the international name of it?
World Asterisms Project. That's what it's called. An asterism is a group of stars that has a name. That's the original Greek name. Yeah. And if you're looking at telescopic asterisms, some of these are showing up on telescopic asterism charts of various different astronomy clubs all over North America and the world. Like the Septum Brandenburgian is you'll find it on those little charts. You go, oh, well, let's put it on this chart. Let's have people chase after with binoculars. Why not? And there's 2,600 of those so far and more. And we have members of the society who have been looking at the sky and looking at these things and going, you know what that looks like? And I've been encouraging people to bring them forward. And we have had a couple of sessions that we call BYO Asterism that we did for Space Place and for the Astronomy Society of the Pacific. And Roland Deschain, who is a longtime member of the societies, okay. Me and my colleague were at the Star Party, we're looking at Boötes. And my friend Brad goes, doesn't that look like a cocktail glass? He goes, yeah, it actually looks like it's got an umbrella. Look. So they can get it with the martini glass and the umbrella. And then next door is Corona Borealis. And he says, so like, what do we call that? He says, oh, I've had that name since I was a kid. That's Grandma's Dentures. Grandma's Dentures.
Did with that cocktail.
Yeah. So, you know, I mean, there are all kinds of people out there that are really keen about this. There's a guy named Steve Saber down in the States who's gone to a lot of different nebula star clusters and said, that looks like a Klingon starship, you know, and people like this, you know, so the stars belong to everybody. And it's a creative process. The coat hanger was originally described by Abdel Rahman al-Sufi in the Book of Big Stars. That is an object you can see in a perfectly dark sky with an unaided eye. But the person who originally drew it so that it looked like a coat hanger and popularized it was a guy named Bracci. He was an American astronomer. It's why it's also called Bracci's cluster. And then people started looking at it saying, yeah, it doesn't look like a coat hanger. And then, yeah. Anybody else? Okay, I think it's coffee time.